Remote. That's how the agent described the Arco. Damn right. The nearest civilization was over 10 miles away. That meant I had to drive to the pub and home again. The house was a crumbling monstrosity built for a reclusive millionaire with a thing for Spanish architecture. A few years of neglect and a remote location meant you could rent the place for next to nothing, if that's what you're into. But I was okay with the solitude. I needed a creative enema for my writer's block. I was working on a novel called The Erasmus Paradigm, an erotic thriller, exploring religion, betrayal, and mortality. Or something like that. For fuck's sake, the title was as far as I'd got. Every few days I would go out on a research mission. I needed to understand the local characters, to lend some authenticity to my work. I would research for as long as I could, then sleep it off wherever the local characters chose to leave me. That's how I met LJ. I'd seen him around, him and his boys, around the village, in the pub. He called me over and offered me a drink. I accepted. It arrived immediately. He introduced me to the other men, all names and nods. Brennan, Jamie, Hinksy. We talked and drank. What brought you to the Arco? How long you plan on staying? Does it bother you all alone up there? The conversation was pretty one-sided. He asked questions and I answered them, and within an hour he'd offered me a job. Can't give you too many details, he told me. We need to borrow one of your outhouses to store something. Want you to keep an eye on it. Nothing heavy. We'll pay you for the bother. He said more, but things started getting foggy. I looked at LJ as his words washed over me and tried to at least look like I understood. Suddenly he was all, "Well, we'll come over tomorrow night. Make sure you're in now." I don't remember accepting. My head was spinning when I left the pub. I thought about LJ and what he'd said and tried to force the memory to stick. Store something in the outhouse, he'd said. Nothing too heavy. As drunk as I was pretty sure I'd just agreed to babysit 24 Kalashnikovs and a rocket launcher. The next day it felt like the whole thing happened to someone else. I still don't know what I'd agreed to, but I was kind of okay with it. So what if some minor crim wants to store a few dodgy TVs and smartphones in my shed? And to be honest, I could use the money. By nightfall I felt like I was throwing a party. I bought wine, even made canapes for fuck's sake. Then I waited. Then LJ burst through the door. "Turn the fucking lights off," he shouted. I saw blood on boots and faces. "Give me the fucking keys." I did as he said. That was when I saw him. The hostage. He just babbled in foreign and bled. Outside I could see Brennan, Hinksy and the others carrying boxes towards the outhouse. "I've got nothing personal against the fellow," LJ smiled. "But he's unlucky enough to be moving around a ton of top-grade heroin." Perfect, I thought. "It's got to be worth £1,100 million, he bragged. I tried not to look surprised. I just fixed a spot between his eyes and stared. My stomach shrank to the size of a salted cashew. I thought I was going to vomit. "There's not much chance of his mates coming round here looking for this stuff," he said. "So you should be fine, but I can't risk moving it for a bit. So here's the plan. I leave it here for 6 months, then I come back and take it away again. That's it." I didn't like the sound of "that's it." "If everyone's still alive on that day, we'll pay you. $500,000. I just said okay. I must have looked pathetic. A car pulled up outside, then someone called to LJ that they were done. The door to the outhouse was open. I could see the boxes stacked up inside. LJ pushed the hostage through the door. Then he reached inside his jacket. Oh, Jesus. Then he turned back to me. "Just leave well alone," he commanded. I stood there for ages, just listening. I heard nothing. Then I went back to the house. There was blood on the floor, and two of the poor fucker's teeth staring up at me like two milky eyes. I cleaned up the blood, then took the teeth to the cliff edge and threw them over. I wanted to throw myself over, but £500,000 stopped me. I stayed on watch all night, checking the road, then the cliffs, looking for headlights, listening for boat engines. Nothing. No one came the next day, or the next. I tried not to think about what had happened. The best way, I thought, was to go back to my writing. I decided to turn my novel into a screenplay. Well, that was useless. So I turned to alcohol. That worked better, except I kept sobering up to find I was still on this pointless vigil. And to make matters worse, my guest had started to smell. I tried different methods of concealment, but nothing really did the job. Then things started to get really weird. I was starting to lose it for real. Fear and guilt permeated everything like the smell of vinegar in my living room. I had to ease my conscience, and perhaps someone could be avenged. I wrote all the details down, everything I knew about LJ, Brennan and the others. A year or so previously, I had a minor brush with the law. The lawyer that sorted it out was all right, and we stayed in touch. Anyway, I sent him the document, with the instruction to send it to the police, newspapers, everyone he could think of if I was to unexpectedly die. If I got it, so did they. Beautiful. It made me feel much better, and as winter set in and a big freeze locked down the smell of death, I was able to return to some sense of normality. But LJ was a man of his word, and 6 months later to the day they came back, I had a copy of the document in a drawer, ready to whip out if things turned rough. They loaded the crates into their van and drove off. I didn't find out what they did with the body. It seemed to just vanish. But the crazy part was, LJ actually paid up. Time for a holiday. There are places in the Far East where for a small amount of wealth, you can live like a king. I wanted it all. Girls, gambling, hotel suites, and I learned that I really am the shallowest man in the world. Purchased trinkets and rented popularity made me, to my very soul, happy. But all good things will end. I should have seen it coming. It was pretty big. Well, I was out of it for a long time. When I came back, it was all doctors, nurses, and no health insurance. Then some twat from the embassy showed up with the bad news. It turns out I was dead. It's a language problem. Happens all the time, he reassured me. Hospital informs embassy about an accident involving a tourist. A few translation issues. Killed and coma, very similar words in the local dialect, you know. They sent a lovely letter to your next of kin, he said. Really touching. Oh, shit. That's the lawyer. It's all fine now, though, he told me. We've informed everyone that you're safe and sound right here.